Welcome to the Unapologetic Entrepreneurship Podcast, where we believe that as entrepreneurs, we get to decide what our business and our life looks like.
And we get to be unapologetic about it.
You're your own boss, so why are you waiting for permission to do things your way?
Here, we ditch the shoulds. No more building a business that looks good on paper but feels bad in your body.
No more following someone else's strategy just because it worked for them or chasing someone else's version of success.
I'm Delia.
And I'm Joana, and this is not just another business strategy podcast.
We are going so much deeper.
We'll be talking about identity, purpose, our inner worlds, and designing a business around the life you actually want to live.
Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to the Unapologetic Entrepreneurship Podcast. And today we are going to talk about pricing and money and all the dollar signs. And Joana, I want to ask you about this at the first, because I think it is so impressive that when you first launched your design business back in 2014, you charged $800, I think it was, for a logo.
Yeah, that was my first project.
Yeah, your first project.
It was a brand identity. But yeah, the client was like, can I just get a logo? Yeah.
Okay, brand identity, $800, right? And then here we are 12 years later. And I know you have done website design packages for with brand identity for around $30K. And I just think that is so impressive. And I would love you to tell us a little bit about that journey. How did you manage to go from $800 to $30,000? And what did it feel like?
Yeah. So if I think back to 2014, I was at a full-time job and all I really wanted was to go freelance full-time. So I just figured if I could match my salary on my free time while I have my full-time job, then I'll quit. I didn't even want big savings back then. I was used to living paycheck to paycheck. I was 22. So when someone asked me how much for a logo, I'm glad that they didn't ask how much for a logo, because I probably would have said something like $150, because I was thinking along the lines of what would people pay, or what would I pay for a logo? What value do I associate with my income, my money spending habits? And it was kind of projecting what the work was worth based on what I think someone could afford, based on what I thought I could afford, which I find is what a lot of people do. It's well, there's no way people pay $30K. In some countries, that's a deposit for a house. Who in their right mind would do that? But they do. And there are people out there that do. And so when this client approached me, she knew that I was trying to get into an online course, and I've told this story often. And she just asked, can $800 buy me a brand identity? So immediately, that's what I started to charge, just because she suggested it. Then I had a couple of jobs. I had already started on my website, and I got a coach who told me, you could easily double your prices for the kind of work that you do. Now, that was amazing advice, but it's also not the kind of advice that can work for everybody, right? Because you can hear people online say, well, just, double your prices. And I'd love for everybody listening to this to just do that. But I wouldn't recommend it if I wasn't in front of that person seeing okay, well, walk me through, how do people find you? What does your website look like? Who have you worked with in the past? How confident are you at doing X, Y, or Z? And then just kind of then based on that, think, yeah, you could definitely double your prices. Of course, there will always be exceptions to the rule of people charging astronomical amounts for things that they're not that great at, but they're just really confident. But in my case, it was just having that experienced coach. She was a web designer herself. She had been doing it for 20 years. And to have her say, no, you can really double your prices, that was great confirmation. I didn't do it immediately, but eventually we started charging $1,500 for brand identity. And if I think back to the timeline of when I had big price jumps, It was always either when like I had a big waiting list of people, because then it's like supply and demand, right? It's like, well, I can afford to lose a couple of these clients. If I'm saying we can only start 3 months from now, I could say like, okay, well, it's $5,000 and see what happens. It also helps to know the business on the other side, the person on the other side of the call. What's their business? How well are they doing? Does it make sense for their business plan for them to have that expense? Because sometimes it's not about you being able to charge that much. Are you getting on the calls with the right people? But then whenever I've had price jumps, it's either been when I've created a new website and rebranded, and with it, I'd always get like, whenever you post, like, I have a new website, who doesn't want to go click on it and check it out, right? So it's always been a type of post that in the past has gotten a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs, and with it, a lot of inquiries. And so I always say, like, whenever we do a relaunch of a website, we make more money and we can up our prices because suddenly we have more demand. But it was also when I started speaking in public. When I did my first speaking gig, suddenly I'm on stage, I'm being seen as an expert, I'm having an hour to talk to these people and convince them that design is not just something to make things pretty, it can be a tool for sales and to help you grow your business. And within an hour, they've rethought what they thought design was about. And they could see that instead of spending more money on marketing, which is a continuous monthly spend, whether you do ads or SEO or you have someone to do Google AdWords and all of that, it's a continuously monthly spend. They could spend once, rebrand, and then see those conversions increase. And it's like, and, you know, it carries on. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And so the minute I got off that stage, I had a line of people wanting to talk to me.
Wow.
And so again, it's like, well, not only does it not matter if I don't close all of them, I could now test a new price, but they also just saw me as an expert. So if I say 1,500, maybe they're going to think that doesn't match. Wait, you're a speaker at this expensive conference? I was not expecting that. So immediately on the spot, I doubled. And for some of the people later in line, I went up to 5K to see, like, can I get away with it? And that's when we started charging 5K for brand identity.
Wait, hang on. Let's just pause a second there. So you had a line of people waiting to speak to you as you came up on stage, and your price just changed as you would, because it is price is objective, right? Like we talk about this all the time. Right. Two designers can be charging very different prices for different things. But what you did there was you completely thought on the spot, supply, demand, showing up as an expert. And you took the bravery of actually listening to that thought of like, hang on, this is an opportunity to grow. And you did it. That's really cool. Very cool.
And now, like, also thinking about our workshop content, which I'm going to plug it in here. If you haven't yet, sign up for it. It's on this Wednesday, the 26th of August, and it's called The Value Gap, Why People Underpay You and How to Fix It. We talk about the two different types of buyers and how everything that you do needs to address both of them. I don't want to spoil too much. And I think that when I came off stage, that's what I already had done. I had already educated them. So the thinkers, the types of buyers that will like read everything and will want proof and will want data and will want client testimonials. I had like fed all of that through my talk. And the impulse, like the feeler type buyers who are like, oh, do I connect with this person? They're more impulsive. They're like, do I like their vibe? And so I think the fact that I was there in person, I could meet both those types of buyers and address their needs. It's like if they connected with me, if they liked me as a person, if they liked how I showed up on stage, I don't know, like my energy, my charisma, or like how I explained things. And they were also in an environment where they paid for this conference with the objective of leveling up their business. So they know that this conference is going to give them tools, it's going to get them to network, it's going to give them all the things to level up their business. So they're ready. They're like, they're scanning for opportunities. How can I level up my business? And then they hear something that is a one-time investment that can level up their business. They're ready for it because they want it. And so they're also potentially going to be more impulsive or more open to spending time to connect there. I think that was a really important piece of being able to raise my rates, was to like, now I have this other layer of like, I'm an agency owner, but I also speak on design, and it just elevates your credibility. And one thing that is in my book, Book Yourself Solid for Creatives, is that the amount of money someone spends with you is proportionate to the amount of trust they have in you. And so it's like, I think that's the work that I did there, is like building trust so that they can spend more, and keep building trust and keep building my reputation along the 12 years of my career, so that people wouldn't have sticker shock price and they'd be like, yeah, I do expect her to be charging that much.
Yeah, like your perceived value. And again, this is kind of what we're going to get into in the workshop on Wednesday, so I don't want to say too much, but your perceived value standing on that stage was high. And so, you know, people pay what they perceive you to be worth, not what your talent is worth, or what, you know, what the final outcome, what the deliverable is. It's like that perception of what your worth is. So I think that's a good point. And the other point is also seizing these opportunities. I think as an entrepreneur, you know, someone else could have been on that stage and come off the stage and set their normal prices. Whereas I think there's a point in this as well of being opportunistic for growth, like knowing when those moments arise. Like you knew it intuitively in that moment. That wasn't something you'd planned. You know, you hadn't gone onto stage thinking, I come off stage and I'm gonna double, triple, whatever my price is. It was being intuitive to the moment and seeing the opportunity. And I do think as entrepreneurs, that is really important for pricing as well.
Yeah. And this reminds me so much of something that I heard Phil Jones, I believe. I'm attributing credit where credit is due, but he talks often on sales. And if you want to learn about the art of selling, like, oh my God, Phil Jones is a master. And he talks about like, okay, he does this like exercise with the audience. And Delia, you can be my audience.
Okay, I'll be the audience.
If you see a pen,
yes,
at the front, like on a gas station, and like those paper stands with like loads of them at a gas station by the cashier, how much is it worth?
79 cents.
Okay. Now, if you see a pen that is like rose gold, it comes in a metallic case, and it's like in a more fancy, not sold at a gas station, but like your favorite stationery store, how much do you think it's worth?
Say rose gold.
With a metallic case.
With a metallic case. Okay, I'm going to say 25 euros.
Yeah, around that, maybe 40, and you'll be like, oh, okay, well, it's a bit expensive for a pen, but okay, it comes in a metallic case. Now, if you go into Harrods and you see a pen that is on a silk pillow enclosed in a glass box, and if you see it, you have to get a guy to come in with a key to hand you white gloves, and he puts on white gloves, and he takes this like glass lid off this display where it's beautiful. The pen is lit with like lights, like it's if in a museum, and he hands you the pen with gloves and only allows you to touch it with gloves. How much do you think it's worth?
I'm going to say 40,000.
So this is the exercise. You are attributing value based on how the object is being perceived.
Yeah, 100%.
And every little touch point matters. Like, maybe now I'm getting away from pricing, but like how you carry yourself in calls matters. What you choose as conversation starters matter. What your background looks like, what you're wearing, the lighting, your email signature, the fact that your email's a Gmail or at your domain. All of these are like the box or the pillow, the silk pillow, or the white gloves. There are all these little price hints of like what people are going to expect leading up to the sales call that you're going to charge.
Oh, I agree 100%, because so often I think by the time someone gets on the sales call, they've already decided what you're worth. Like, they might not have a number in their head, right? They might not be coming onto the call thinking she's worth 30K, but they will be coming onto the call with an idea. It's like you walk past Gucci, you know instinctively whether or not you can afford to step in, right?
Yeah.
So and that is
and so some people don't.
Yeah, that's another point, actually, isn't it?
And right. And whereas then a lot of people will walk into Primark or Zara or whatever. And I think we can treat the store as like your calendar. I think I've walked into Louis Vuitton once because I was an event by it, and the event was all about like being a millionaire. And I don't like designer bags, but I was like, what is the experience like? I've actually never walked into the store before. And oh my God, like you get champagne and you get a personal shopper that stands by you and like immediately takes your name and email address. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. And she's like, well, what are your preferences? Like, where do you live? Oh, cool. Like, she makes small talk. She gets you champagne. She gets you this. She asks you to sit. She's like, let me bring you what I think you're going to like. But it's funny because like I never walk into that store because I don't want to spend that much on a bag. And so maybe they won't get into your calendar, or the wrong people won't get into your calendar if you do everything right to be perceived as like, no, I'm like high ticket service provider. What you get with me is great quality service and a great quality outcome.
Yeah, I agree. And as you were saying that about Louis Vuitton, actually, it made me think about how perhaps as creative service providers, or even if you're listening to this and you're not creative, but you're a service provider, you're an entrepreneur, I think the space that we can really play with is building our business to be like a beautiful, independent boutique that is perhaps not comparable to anything. We have this opportunity to design our brand as something unique, because like you say, everybody knows Louis Vuitton's up here. Everybody knows Primark's down here. But then what we have is this really beautiful space in the middle where price ranges can be enormous. And I think there's a lot of fun in building a brand that feels like that feels like, like those boutiques, like maybe you're in Paris or in Barcelona, we have a lot too. And you walk past this storefront and it's just got character and it's charming and everything feels very intentional. And you walk in and immediately you want to touch everything, you want to feel everything, you're enjoying the experience. And honestly, you probably end up buying the same top and it probably costs 3 times more than it would have cost in Zara.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like this is the space where as entrepreneurs we can build our brands to be like, really, and that's where we get to bring our personality in as well and make it unique and different. That people want to step into. And just to link that back to pricing is that, of course, once we're doing that, we are setting our value. We're giving an indication of what our price is.
Mm-hmm. And like, just because we're mentioning these luxury brands doesn't mean that you have to match the style of that, because there's a lot of brands that are expensive, but they're really bold or fun or colorful. So you don't have to match what we can imagine. Like when you picture luxury, you picture like maybe serif fonts and gold and whatever. You don't have to like make your services only cater to that for you to be able to charge a high price. There's a lot of brands that are really wealthy and they have really fun, colorful, bold branding. But when it gets to a certain level of investment, there is a whole experience and service that they expect along the way. And little things like showing up late to a sales call, not being careful with how you write the email back and forth before the call, and all of that is already giving them hints on whether they want to work with you or not. Delia, have I told you that my first work experience was for a very, very wealthy family?
Oh, no, tell me.
I have to be like, I'm trying to like be very confidential about that. But so
inside scoop.
Yeah, so I was about to intern for an agency in London in September. And they had a really big client, this family that owned a lot of businesses. It's like wealth beyond what we can imagine. And their daughter was starting a charity, their 16-year-old daughter, and she wanted a graphic designer to help edit her book. She could only do it in her summer because then she'd be back at school. She was doing amazing work with her charity. I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to disclose the identity. But so I was brought in to be her graphic designer, my first boss. My first client was 16 years old and I was 21. And I flew to their holiday mansion somewhere beautiful. I'll also not name so I don't disclose anything. But I look back now and I really value that experience because it helped me see up close, like, what do people that have a lot of wealth and that could afford these services, what do they value? And more than the quality of my design, they would value my etiquette, my professionalism, my punctuality, and if I was uber respectful of their time.
That's a big one.
Yeah. It's like their time is their most precious asset, and I should be able to get the job done with the least amount of consulting possible. And that was my first ever client. Of course, the daughter had a lot of time to spend with me, but whenever we had to do like checks by the parents, I was super careful to be like, okay, we're not going to interrupt. We're not going to like this. We're going to have it like on the table ready, like all the spreads so it could be easy to glance and not have to flick through, like we would think ahead and be like, how could this be like a 2-second thing for them? And I think back to that experience and it taught me a lot. And I got to experience up close how they hired their personal chefs, and I would speak to like all the contractors that would work for them and their nannies, and like how did they get into that level of client. And a lot of it was like professionalism and also like knowing the right contacts. But if they're gonna be working with you, the one thing they don't want to do is waste time. So people who have successful businesses, the CEOs that are willing to pay $30,000 for a website, is because if you've built enough trust, they know it's worth it because they know you're going to handle it all for them and going to message them the least amount of times possible and will get it done on time. And like, if I think back to like one of our clients that we've had together, I know that maybe for copy you need more time with them, but I would make looms and then I would cut them down and edit them to be shorter. And I think in total, I probably took up like 2 hours over the course of 2 months of their time to get the website done.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And I think as well, like you say, they want you to use the least amount of time and they want you to take the initiative. So that's also where it becomes different. When you're charging so much more, it's really leading with confidence, taking the initiative, making decisions instead of going back and forth and, can I just change this? Can I just do that? But bringing that, initiative to the table. And I think you mentioned something else there that's important to highlight is once you build enough trust. And I think that's key because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now is actually the customer experience once they've already hired you, right? So once they've hired you, taking that initiative, thinking about all the touch points in the customer experience, but leading up to that to get that higher ticket client, it's a case of building trust, right? Making them feel like you are the solution to their problem, that you are going to make their life easier, that they can trust you to do that. And that's where, again, it's your perceived value online, right? So much of it is online before they even experience any of this. But of course, once they become your client, it's important because then suddenly you're playing in a different pool. You know, you and I both have been fortunate enough to work with someone who's a recognized industry leader, and then that has led to more work in their circles. And that's where, sort of maintaining that customer experience, I think, is so important to keep getting those referrals, which is then important for maintaining and increasing your price from that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's been very important is I've been so harsh or strict, maybe I would say, with myself and my team to a point where sometimes it would cause me a lot of stress, but to like the standards we would uphold, not just about the work we'd put out, but like emails need to be answered as efficiently, as quickly as possible. We need to be as polite. If things, like I had this whole protocol around client service that I knew was just as important as the work itself. Because if a client's like, oh, well, that's a shame. That's not really in line with what I was thinking with the design. I don't love it. They can always say, like, can you change it? And we can work with them until we get it right. But if we miss a deadline, if we don't respond to an email on time, that could piss them off and that could get them talking. And if you start getting clients in the same circles, I've learned, because they've told me, they would meet up at conferences and I'd be brought up in conversation. So I'd need to make sure that I was treating them all as equals and giving them all the same type of service. Or whenever something would go wrong, I'd try and like preemptively explain and get them to understand why the work wasn't going to be done on time, and to get their empathy and to hopefully not have that ruin my reputation of being an agency that gets things done on time. Because that's been something that we've always said in every sales call and prided ourselves on. But like once you get clients referring you to their circles and in their network, you need to protect your reputation and you need to deliver a good service so that they could be raving about you to their network.
And I think as well, when you're in that circle, this is where pricing is important, because they will be expecting to pay a certain price. And actually, by having lower prices can actually be a disservice. When you get to that point where they all know what each other are paying, they'll be talking openly about how much a website design package costs when they're at a business retreat. Like, we know that, don't we? Because,
And you'll be surprised how the contractors you hire become a status symbol.
Yes. That's kind of like,
it's no longer like, what car did you drive into this conference with? No, it's like, who's doing your Facebook ads marketing? Oh my God, you're working with her. I heard she worked with this person. She's so expensive, but I heard she's worth it. How's the experience been? These are the kind of conversations I'd overhear.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with that. And there comes a point. No, that's perfect. And there comes a point where if your prices are too low, that same mentality thinks, oh, you're not sick of it then. And it becomes a fine line. But even my 6-year-old daughter did this the other day. I mean, I did have a chat to her afterwards, because I felt like, oh my gosh, have I not been imposing the right values on her? Not imposing, but have I not been gently showing her the right values? Because we went somewhere and she wanted to buy something. I can't remember what it was now. We were, let's say it was like a piece of jewelry or something. I'm trying to remember the exact thing. We were in a store and I think it was jewelry. And she was like looking at all the different things and she knew she was allowed to buy something. It was like a treat, Rose. And she said to me, well, Mummy, which one's the most expensive? Like, why does that matter? And she said, because the most expensive is the best. And I was like, okay, we need to have a chat, because that is not true. But it's not true technically. The most expensive isn't the best, right? But psychologically,
but
even from the age of 6, these are the messages we're given. Yeah. Like, we are given this message that the best is more expensive, and I know that I've had that experience too, where I've been like renovating my house, and my mom always says, like, you have to get 3 prices in, so I get in my 3 prices. I almost always, unless the experience was incredible with the person, or they gave me something to really build my trust for them. If one price is a lot lower than the others, I almost discredit it because it feels too good to be true, or
Yeah.
it's, oh, well, that can't be. We do have so many phrases around this, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
If something feels too good to be true, then it can't be. And so I think that's the other thing with raising your prices from a mindset perspective is actually, if it feels like, oh my gosh, this price is so high, I can't believe I'm about to say this price, but leaning into this energy of like, yeah, it is status to work with me, and this, and that can actually instill confidence in the person that's hearing the number.
Yeah. But if you're looking to learn all the ways that you could have the right signals in place to be able to build that trust before you even get on the call, or to even get people to book a call with you, the right people, then that's everything we're going to cover in our workshop. Is how do you get to a place where you've built enough trust that people want to book a call with you and are expecting you to charge that price? Because one thing that I always say to my students, and Delia and I practice this, is like, don't price based on the competition. Don't price based on what you think people can afford. Price based on what is the lifestyle that you want to live, and reverse engineer the math to understand, like, okay, well, my dream life, I'd be making this much money. I'd be having these many days off. Well, then how much do you need to make in what amount of time? And how do you need to price your services to be able to create that dream lifestyle? And then try and get there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And then once I've got that number in my head, how do I now build a brand that is that perceived value? Because it's all very well to be like, okay, now I've got this new number. Great, I'm going for it. But if you don't increase your perceived value, then it's going to be very hard to say that number out loud. And that's what we're going to be getting into on the workshop as well, isn't it? Really talking about how you can change your perceived value online so that people come to the sales call and, they're not going to be shocked by your number, right? They've got that good idea. They're not going to run a mile. So we'll put the link for the workshop in the show notes so you can come along, and it's free. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any burning questions, then you'll have the opportunity to ask us live.
So we can't wait to see you there. Go grab your free seat, and we'll see you all on Wednesday.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.